السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with كتاب الروض المربع, and we stopped by the beginning of the chapter of السواك, where he says here, as we see, باب السواك وسنن الوضوء. باب السواك وسنن الوضوء. السواك, as we know, is, as it's going to be defined, al-oud, or the stick that is used to clean one's teeth and one's mouth. And this is the word as-siwak, from saka yasuk, which is basically the tool or that stick that is used for cleaning one's teeth. And as is going to be mentioned in details here, but here he says babu siwak wa sunan al-wudu, and the recommended acts of al-wudu. And it's going to be mentioned also with it sunan al-fitra, the natural sunan that is mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. And this is all before what comes after, which is al-wudu. This is part of al-tahara, part of the purification, which is a condition for the salah, and whether it's in the recommended, from a recommended perspective, or something that is an obligation. So as-siwak is always mentioned because of the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. So he says here, وَمَا أُلْحِقَ بِذَلِكَ. Now in the sharh, in al-Rawd al-Murbi', he describes by saying, وَمَا أُلْحِقَ بِذَلِكَ. وَمَا أُلْحِقَ بِذَلِكَ. And what's also mentioned with that, associated with it, attached to it, meaning that it's not just the siwak, but other things. من الادهان. Al-iddihan is using duhn, and a duhn is when using oil or something to be on one's hair, beard, head. This is al-iddihan. Wal-iktihal is using kuhl on the eyes. Wal-ikhtitan, which is circumcision. Wal-istihdad, al-istihdad from shaving the pubic hair, from the hadid, or the using a blade or so to shave the pubic hair. وَنَحْوِهَا, and the like of it, and the like of this, meaning the like of what is which is, as it's going to be mentioned in the chapter, which is part of sunan al-fitra and sunan al-wudu, and sunan al-wudu. So this is basically, the chapter is about this. And of course, وَنَحْوِهَا, every time we see وَنَحْوِهَا and the like of it, they don't mention, like when we talk, and the like of this is just like that without being meaning something. Of course, it means something. So, like for example, cutting the nails, trimming the mustache, growing the beard, which is basically sunan al-fitr. Then he says, as-siwaku wal-miswak. As-siwak wal-miswak. That means both are correct. As-siwak wal-miswak ismun lil-oud alladhi yustaku bihi. It's the name of al-oud. Al-oud is not what we think of al-oud as the perfume. Al-oud, which actually, this is where it comes from. It's basically the stick. Al-oud is the stick. الذي يستاك به. الذي يستاك به, and this is in the present tense. الذي يستاك به. ويطلق السواك على الفعل. Also, the word siwak refers to the verb. So you can use siwak as a verb. So it's used as a verb also, which is the same word. So siwak refers to the verb and refers to the stick. So, and also miswak is correct. أي, what is the meaning of it? دلك الفم بالعود لإزالة نحو تغير كالتسوك. دلك الفم. الدلك is rubbing. So دلك الفم, the mouth, بالعود, with the stick. لإزالة, to remove, نحو تغير. تغير is change. نحو تغير any change. Small, major. كالتسوق, like التسوق, which is basically, that is what is meant here, which is السواك religiously, and that is to remove, that's what the purpose of it is, to remove the smell in the mouth and to clean the mouth. So this is what السواك and al-miswak, and it also correct to be used as the verb. This is the same thing for the verb. So this is the definition of it. And then after that, in the Zad al-Mustaqni, when he says باب السواك وسنن الوضوء, he says التسوك بعود لين منق غير مضر لا يتفتت. So now this is what's recommended, and there's more. What's recommended here are these things when it comes to describing or the characteristics of the proper siwak that is used as a recommended act to clean oneself. So he says first at-tasawwuk. So now we said at-tasawwuk is the act of using the siwak. bi'udin layyin, with a stick that is layyin. Layyin means soft. سواء كان رطبا, he says here in the sharh, سواء كان رطبا أو يابسا مندى. Whether it's رطبا, الرطب is the wet, when it's wet, like الرطب, the dates. رطبا is wet. أو يابسا, that means it's dry. مندى, that means also it refers to when it's wet. So this is the munadda, like the ratban, more of a fresh one versus the dry, and munadda when it's wet. Right? That means it's not dry, because the dry would break into small pieces. So this is what is meant here. من أراك أو زيتون أو عرجون أو غيرها. This is the different types of siwak sticks, whether it's from arak, the tree of al-arak, or the tree of zaytun, which is olives, أو عرجون. And al-urjun is from the palm tree, what you call it, subhanallah, I forgot the name of it, which is basically from what's on the palm trees. This is al-urjun, as it's mentioned also in the Quran. And that's what it's even mentioned there. So this is whether it's from the arak or from the olives or from the palm tree. أو غيرها, or any other tree. It doesn't have to be arak only. The best, of course, as it's mentioned of the hadith, is the arak. And some said actually the olives, the Prophet ﷺ used it, and used to also sometimes would use the urjun, but most of the time, and what's the best, is the arak. So this is التسوق بعود لين, and as long as it's soft and it's munqin, right? So this is munqin, that means it's purifying to the mouth. It's purifying to the mouth. غير مضر, because that's the purpose of it. غير مضر, not harmful. Not harmful. He says then احتراز عن الرمان والآسي وكل ما له رائحة طيبة. الاحتراز from الحرز is when you shield yourself from something. When the word حرز means of protection. So here what it meant by this is to stay away from. احتراز عن الرمان. When he says غير مضر, not harmful. So anything that is harmful, of course, is not to be used. So he mentioned here an example of what might be harmful. Al-rumman is the oud, the sticks that is from pomegranates. Wal-as is one of the, as he mentioned here also, the author here, which is something that has a smell to it. Something that is the trees that has a fragrance to it, evergreen or something like this. So وكل ما له رائحة طيبة, وكل ما له رائحة طيبة, and anything that has a pleasant smell. to it. Because this can be harmful, it has a taste to it, things of that nature. So, and also al-as, they refer to oftentimes they describe it as al-rayhan. Al-rayhan is the basil. So to avoid these types of sticks to clean the mouth from, and again, this is all as he mentioned, غير مضر. That comes under the category of what's not harmful. Because to them, or how they explain it, is that these types of trees or these types of sticks from trees that has a good smell, it changes to have a bad smell afterwards. So this is not because there's an evidence to say that this is not good or that good. It all comes under the meaning of غير مضر, not harmful, and doesn't cause bad smell, because that's against the whole purpose of it. So this is what he mentioned in the sharh. So التسوق بعود لين, with a oud that is لين, soft, منقن. That means it's, as we talked about that in the previous chapter, that means it's purifying. It purifies, it cleans. The purpose of it, it's for it to clean. غير مضر, not harmful. And he mentioned here some of the things in the sharh. And you can add to it whatever is known in one's environment at one's time. Anything that is harmful, of course, to stay away from it or causes a bad smell. Also, another characteristics to it, لا يتفتت. لا يتفتت. التفتت is when something breaks into small pieces. ولا يجرح. He says in the sharh, ولا يجرح. That means it doesn't also cause wounds. It doesn't cause wounds. So لا يتفتت, because if it's when it becomes very dry, it breaks into small pieces. So this is not a good siwak to use. This is a time to get rid of it or to do something to it. And the same thing if it causes bleeding to one's mouth. This is not also something good, because it's going to be mixed with blood. So, and that's one of the things when a person has a siwak, is to take care of it, is to clean it, to cut it, because the purpose of it is not just a movement to the mouth, in the mouth for an act of worship. No, it has a purpose to it, as it's clearly mentioned here. So it's to clean the mouth. If it's not cleaning the mouth and it becomes old, or it has a bad smell, or it's not being well taken care of, then that's not from the sunnah. So it's not to show or to show the people before the salah that a person is using the siwak, because that's the sunnah. Right? It's about cleaning the mouth before entering into the salah. And because of the purpose of the siwak is right before the salah, right before the wudu, and right before the salah is when a person, the last thing before he says Allahu Akbar, he uses the siwak. Because now he's about to make the dhikr and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best state ever, which is the state of the salah. So it's not just the act of moving a stick in one's mouth as a way of following the sunnah. It's about cleaning again, and that's basically the whole thing. So لا يتفتت. And if it's يتفتت, if it breaks into small pieces, then a person will have something in his mouth when he's in the salah, and he becomes busy with trying to get it out of his mouth during the salah. And الفتات لا يتفتت. الفتات is when is the small things. Someone is eating the futat, the crumbs, basically. Yeah, it's a word that is used for crumbs. So ولا يجرح. ويكره. So after mentioning the characteristics of the siwak, التسوق بعود لين منقن غير مضر لا يتفتت. لا يتفتت. Then in the sharh he says ويكره بعود يجرح أو يضر أو يتفتت. ويكره, and it is disliked, with a oud, with a stick that is يجرح, wounds, أو يضر, or harmful, or يتفتت. يتفتت again becomes crumbs or becomes broken to pieces, because all of that is against the purpose of the siwak. He says, the next مسألة, لا بأصبعه وخرقة. لا بأصبعه وخرقة. which means not with his finger, and a khirqa. And al-khirqa, we just mentioned it, I'm not sure if it's yesterday or the day before, in the ayah, وَخَرَقُوا لَهُ بَنِينَ وَبَنَاتٍ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. If you remember the ayah in Surah Al-An'am. So, وَلَا بِأُصْبُعِهِ. He says in the sharh, وَلَا يُصِيبُ السُنَّةِ. وَلَا يُصِيبُ السُنَّةَ مَنْ اسْتَاكَ بِأُصْبُعِهِ. He is not following the sunnah. Al-isaba is when you hit something. And it's a word that can be used for being wounded because you hit someone, in a harmful way. But when it's mentioned like asaba sunnah, that means he hit the sunnah. That means he followed the sunnah. He got it right. He got it on right on the right place. So la yusibu sunnah. He does not follow the sunnah. The one that istak, the one that made the siwak or used the siwak bi usbu'ihi, by his hand, by his finger. So if a person doesn't have a siwak, is it, then to use your finger, for example, before the salah to do that? No, it's not. This is not from the sunnah as it's mentioned here. He did not follow the sunnah then in this case. وَخِرْقَةٍ. Al-khirqa, as we said, is the torn piece of cloth. When it's a piece of cloth that it get torn. This is the khirqa. وَنَحْوِهَا, and the like of it, and the like of al-khirqa. Whether it's, this can be also part of it when we talk about the toothbrush, for example. But the toothbrush, does it? If a person uses it, is he follow the sunnah if he uses the toothbrush since it cleans the mouth? Right? It doesn't have to be that if it's not mentioned in the sunnah, that means a person doesn't use it. We do many things, and it comes under the category of being clean. So if a person uses soap, for example, no one would say, well, there was no this special soap or this soap at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, so it's not from the sunnah to use soap. Of course, this is wrong. If a person cleans himself with whatever is available, as long as there's nothing haram in it, this is basically following the sunnah in the general terms of cleaning oneself. But with this matter, as we hear in the madhab here, with using the finger or a piece of cloth, if it's meant for it to be like before the salah, before the wudu, and a person think that he's following the sunnah, no. But if this is the way for him to clean his mouth, there's no problem. It's not like he's saying, don't use your finger, don't use a piece of cloth, don't use a toothbrush. No, use it, clean your mouth, and clean your teeth. And a person can be rewarded for it also, especially that if he's going to the masjid and he's going to be in the salah and he's cleaning his mouth to make sure that there's no bad smell from this, is a rewardable act, of course. And this mas'ala by itself has opinions. Even in the madhab, there is a riwayah, another opinion in the madhab, that it's okay to be used other than the siwak if there's no other thing to be, if the siwak is not there. Because the purpose of it is the cleaning. And that's, if anything that would do the cleaning for the mouth, this is also a person follows the sunnah in this case. He says, وَنَحْوِهَا, and the like of it. He says why this is not, the person does it, he's not following the sunnah. لأن الشرع لم يرد به, because the shara, the deen, did not come with it. There's no evidence to it. ولا يحصل به الإنقاء, and there's no inqa, there's no cleaning that happens as a result of that. كالعود, like the stick. One's finger won't do anything. So this is basically what is the purpose of it. Two things. There's no evidence to it, and the evidence is that it's mentions that is not authentic. And there's no purifying to it. It does not purify. But you would find in the statements of the ulama, and even in the madhab, that it's still a person follows the sunnah if he's clean his mouth with anything, and that includes again toothbrush and even fingers and things like this, but without getting into the details. So ولا بإصبعه وخرقة. ثم يقول, then he says مسنون كل وقت. So after mentioning the different characteristics of the siwak, he says مسنون كل وقت. It's masnoon, it's recommended all the time. Let me read the زاد مسنون كل وقت لغير صائم بعد الزوال. بعد الزوال, without being fasting after the zawal. So مسنون recommended from the sunnah كل وقت, at all times, anytime. It's always recommended. خبر قوله التسوك. He's saying that مسنون here is خبر to his statement التسوك. So when we go back here, the word التسوك خبر, this is مبتدأ, التسوك مبتدأ, and مسنون خبر. مسنون خبر completes the sentence. مسنون كل وقت خبر قوله التسوك أي يسن كل وقت. That means it's recommended at all times. لحديث السواك مطهرة للفم مرضاة للرب رواه الشافعي وأحمد وغيرهما. Because the hadith السواك is مطهرة, purification to the mouth, مرضاة للرب, المرضاة from الرضا, that means it's seeking the pleasure of the Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And مطهرة, مرضاة, this is the noun. That means a person is doing that, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رواه الشافعي وأحمد وغيرهما. And this is a sound hadith. He says لغير صائم بعد الزوال. So it's all times except for a fasting person after zawal. And الزوال is the time of dhuhr. What's the ruling here? He says فيكره. Then it's disliked after the zawal, after the adhan of the dhuhr, for the fasting person. If he's not fasting, then it's recommended at all times. This is what it meant here. He says فيكره فرضا كان الصوم أو نفلا. فرضا, whether it's an obligatory fasting or naflan, or recommended fasting. Then he says وقبل الزوال يستحب له بيابس. Before the zawal, for a fasting person in the morning, يستحب له, it's recommended for him بيابس, with a dry one, not a wet one, not a fresh one, so that it doesn't leave taste in his mouth that he can swallow. ويباح برطب. ويباح, that means it's permissible for a رطب, for something that is wet or fresh to be used, meaning in the morning. Why this is mentioned in the morning before zawal? There is a hadith he mentions, لحديث إذا صمتم فاستاكوا بالغداء ولا تستاكوا بالعشي. He says أخرجه البيهقي عن علي رضي الله عنه. إذا صمتم, if you fast, فاستاكوا, then this is the amr of a siwak. Then use the siwak بالغداء, meaning in the morning. ولا تستاكوا بالعشي, and do not use the siwak in العشي. العشي after dhuhr or after asr. So the second part of the day. And this hadith, as you see here, even is mentioned, which is not authentic, right? So the hadith is not authentic. So if the hadith was authentic, then the mas'ala is very clear. But since the hadith is weak, then which is another riwayah from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, that it's then the suwak is to be used at all times. To be used at all times. So this is the mas'ala of using the suwak during fasting. And there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he would use the siwak all day while fasting. So this is to show that it's permissible, and the issue of having it between before the zawal or after the zawal, the hadith, as we heard, is not authentic. So this is المسألة مسنون كل وقت لغير صائم بعد الزوال. Then he says متأكد عند صلاة وانتباه وتغير فم. Now متأكد here, we heard مسنون, that means it's from the sunnah, it's recommended. متأكد here, it's more stressed. So now here you have it as a more stressed ruling here. So it's مسنون sunnah مؤكدة, if it's correct to say. Or المسنون here استنانا متأكدا. So it's a stressed sunnah now. So it's more stressed than the previous ones. And that's why متأكد خبر ثاني. ثان. It's a خبر also to التسوق. التسوق مسنون and so on. And then متأكد, this is a second خبر. But متأكد when is it متأكد or more stressed? عند صلاة, by a صلاة. And عند gives the meaning of very close, right before the صلاة. عند صلاة, that's number one. He says in the شرح فرضا كانت أو نفلة, whether it's فرض obligatory صلاة or نفل صلاة. and عند انتباه. So when he says عند صلاة وانتباه, so انتباه also عند انتباه. انتباه is waking up. And al-intibah is when someone is become alert or wake up and like this. وعند انتباه من نوم ليل أو نهار. انتباه from the sleep during the day or during the night, whether it's during the day or during the night. وعند انتباه من نوم ليل أو نهار. And also وعند تغير, and in when there's change, تغير رائحة فم. So in the متن here وتغير فم, and the change of the mouth. What is meant by the change of the mouth is the change of the smell of the mouth. Right? So بمأكول أو غيره, with something that is to be eaten or other than that. Anything that changes the smell of the mouth. Whether a person ate something that he needs to clean his teeth or mouth, or because of sleep or something like this that changes, anything that changes the smell of the mouth. وعند وضوء, now he says in the شرح وعند وضوء, and also before the wudu, right before the wudu. وقراءة, قراءة, reciting Quran. He said زاد الزركشي والمصنف في الإقناع. الزركشي, he added, and also the author here in his book al-Iqna', he added ودخول منزل, when you entering the manzil, the house. ومسجد, entering a masjid. إطالة سكوت, when sukut is silence. إطالة is long silence causes the mouth to change its smell. وخلو المعدة من الطعام, and when the stomach is empty, خلو, from food. واصفرار الأسنان, and when the teeth becomes yellow. So all of that is, that goes back to that it's masnoon at all times, but it's mutaakkid, it's more stressed when there's need for it. So it's recommended at all times to use the siwak, whether a person needs or he doesn't need to make siwak. But if there's a change to the smell of the mouth, or in these situations where there's salah, there's wudu, also the Quran, this is now it's more stressed to use the siwak and to cleanse one's mouth. Because all of that is the siwak is used to clean the mouth and to remove the smell in it. So that's why it's mutaakkid whenever the smell of the mouth changes. And of course, the evidences with the wudu and others are very clear. So after mentioning here the mutaakkid when عند صلاة وانتباه وتغير فم. And al-intibah here again refers to waking up from sleep. Okay, so this is what al-intibah means. Then he says ويستاك عرضا. Now he's going to talk about how to use the siwak, the way to make the siwak. What's recommended of using the siwak. ويستاك, and this is in the present tense for the individual, to make siwak عرضا. عرضا, sideways. And al-ard is the width. Al-tul is the length. So al-ard wal-tul, you have the going sideways versus up and down. So ويستاك عرضا, using the siwak عرضا. استحبابا, he says استحبابا as a way of being recommended. بالنسبة إلى الأسنان, with regards to the teeth. They mentioned that this is recommended. Of course, if it's recommended, that means there's an evidence from the Prophet ﷺ But he says here with regards to the asnan, and it's there's some athar or evidences, which is the ulama, they said it's weak, but that's what, even if the hadith or the athar is weak, they would mention it as a recommended thing, especially that if it's has a meaning to it, where istaku ardan or make suwak ardan. But he refers here to the asnan. And another point, or another reason they mentioned here, is because al-istiyak, or if you use the suwak up and down, not to the sides, this can cause bleeding to the gum, or can harm the gum, especially if the suwak is yabis or dry. So, and a person has to be careful. So it doesn't mean that it's only to be done sideways, but to be done whatever ways to clean the teeth, and also to go up and down, but to be careful not to harm oneself or to cause oneself to bleed. استحبابا بالنسبة إلى الأسنان, recommended when it comes to the teeth, because the suwak is not just on the teeth. بيده اليسرى, he says here another thing, with his left hand, بيده اليسرى على أسنانه, on his teeth, ولثته, اللثة is the gum, ولسانه, his tongue. So this is another mas'ala here in the sharh with regards to the left hand. So is it the left hand or the right hand? Right. So here in the madhab, it's to be using the left hand while making siwak. And you would find all kinds of other narrations, and the ulama, they would say the left hand or the right hand, both are fine. And some said the right hand, but to use to clean the left side first. Because cleaning in general, there's umum, there's the general hadith that talks about cleaning is to use the left. So that's why left hand or the right hand, and to use first the left side of the mouth. So here the madhab يستاك عرضا استحبابا بالنسبة إلى الأسنان بيده اليسرى, with his left hand. And to be at ease with the matter, so that it's not something that has to be this way or that way. He says ويغسل السواك, and it's recommended to يغسل, to wash the siwak, to keep it clean, of course. ولا بأس أن يستاك به اثنان فأكثر. لا بأس, that means there's no harm if more than one uses the siwak. As Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam used to give me the siwak to wash it, and she would say فأبدأ به فأستاك. So before she wash it, she would use it first, because the last time that it was used by the mouth of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Then she would wash it, and then she give it to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. ويغسل السواك ولا بأس أن يستاك به اثنان فأكثر, more than 2 or 3, there's no harm. That means it's not haram or anything like this. قال في الرعاية, one of the ulama of the Hanabila, Ibn Himdan, he said in the book of الرعاية, he has a book called الرعاية الكبرى and الرعاية الصغرى. He says ويقول إذا استاك, and he says when he's making siwak, اللهم طهر قلبي ومحص ذنوبي, to say, oh Allah, purify my heart, ومحص ذنوبي, and purify my dhunub. Right? But there is no evidence to that in the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So you would find these types of things. But it brings the point where, as some of the ulama, they say, if a person makes any dua, that's fine, but without believing that this is from the sunnah. Anytime you're in a situation where it reminds you of something, like, for example, using the suwak to purify yourself, so that reminds you of the purification of your heart. So if you say Allahumma tahir qalbi, this is permissible, right? Mahis dunubi, purify my sins. But to think that this is a dhikr to be said, or a dua to be said because that's from the sunnah or so, then we have to make sure that this is an authentic narration that the Prophet ﷺ said that. And also not to make it as a habit, or a person makes it as part of the deen to say this. It's just to be at ease with oneself. It's like saying, can I make dua now? Can we say now, for example, oh, may Allah forgive us? Yes, we can. And this to be at ease with these things, but without making it as part of the sunnah, or to make rituals to it. And again, there's no evidence to this dua. He says, قال بعض الشافعية وينوي به الإتيان بالسنة. Some of the Shafi'is, they said وينوي به, and meaning he would have the niyyah or the intention, the one that would see this, that he is following the sunnah, or the one that is using the siwak. Why? Because the siwak is something that is from the sunnah. So have the intention that you're using the siwak not just to clean yourself, but to follow the sunnah. So you get rewards for it. Now, قال بعض الشافعية وينوي به الإتيان بالسنة. And it shows also how the ulama, they are Hanabila, and he mentioned some of the Shafi'iyya, they said this and they benefit from it. So this is with regards to ويستاكوا عرضا and the other things that he mentioned, washing it, cleaning it. مبتدئا بجانب فمه الأيمن. So يستاكوا عرضا, to use the siwak back and forth sideways. مبتدئا, starting with بجانب فمه الأيمن, with the right side of his mouth. With the right side. So using the left hand and starting with the right side of the mouth. And the opposite is also mentioned. So, but here he says, فَتُسَنُّ الْبَدَاءَةُ بِالْأَيْمَنِ فِي سِوَاكِ. فَتُسَنُّ, it's recommended to start. Al-Bada'a is from al-Bid. Al-Bada'a, the noun, to start with the right side in siwak, وَطُهُور, and in purification, وَشَأْنِهِ كُلِّهِ, in all of his affairs, غَيْرَ مَا يُسْتَقْذَرْ, unless it's something that is yustaqdar, something that is dirty. When something that is dirty or not clean, then it's recommended to use the left. And this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. In wudu, for example, he would use the right first and then the left. When he entered the masjid, the right before the left, like this. And that is istiqdar, anything that is dirty or impure, then he would use the left. مبتدئا بجانب فمه. So as we heard, the madhab is to use the left hand and to start with the right side of the mouth. ويدهن غبا. Now after mentioning the siwak, we'll mention just two mas'alas here and then we'll stop by the tasmiyah and the wudu. He says ويدهن غبا. يدهن is using the duhn or oil, basically, on one's hair. استحبابا, recommended. غبا, al-ghib is when something is not done in a consistent manner. So this is what he says here. يوما يدهن ويوما لا يدهن. One day he put oil, another day he doesn't put oil. And also the duhn is not just on the hair, it can be also on the body. لأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم, because the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام said نهى عن الترجل إلا غبا, that he forbade الترجل. الترجل is combing the hair, except غبا, except once in a while. رواه النسائي والترمذي وصححه. So and this is what is meant by that is for a person to be away from being so what's the word for it? When a person becomes too much indulged into luxury, that he's so particular in making sure that everything is perfect in his hair and his face and things like this. This takes the person into an extreme level. So to be at ease with it. If you comb your hair, it's fine. If you don't comb your hair, you're also fine with it. But as they say, if someone has hair because of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, then is to take care of it. If you have hair, is to take care of it so that you don't look uncombed and things like this. So what's mentioned here is the extreme way of beautifying oneself. And there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, when one of the Sahaba, he had hair, and he said, and yuhsin ilayya, to take care of his hair, not to leave it uncombed and things like this. So this is ويدهن غبا, to be away from being extreme. والترجل تسريح الشعر ودهنه. الترجل is to comb the hair and to put oil on it or cream. This is الترجل. ويدهن غبا ويكتحل وترا. Also ويكتحل. الاكتحال is this is the verb of using كحل. He says في كل عين, in every eye, وترا. وترا in odd numbers, which is 3 times. بالإثمد المطيب. The best type of كحل is the إثمد. الإثمد is a type of كحل, the best type of it. Antimony, I think they have it in English. المطيب, the one that has good smell to it. كل ليلة قبل أن ينام. Every night before he sleeps. Every night before he sleeps. لفعله صلى الله عليه وسلم, because of the action of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. رواه أحمد وغيره عن ابن عباس. Right, so this is, the use of the كحل before going to sleep. And this is a way to, as some of the hadith that it's mentioned with regards to it's healthy for the eyes. يجلو البصر, makes one's eyesight better. وينبت الشعر, and causes the hair to grow. These types of things. And it's not, as the ulama they say, not for a man to beautify his eyes. It's not what people, when women put kuhl to beautify her eyes. This is not what the Prophet ﷺ would do to his eyes. So when, some people they put, or men they put kuhl, they extend it to the sides like this. This is not the way the Prophet ﷺ. But he would put that before he sleeps, right? And it's right in, how the kuhl is being put, not on the face, but on the eyes. And this is as a way of what's mentioned is that it's best for one's eyes and things like this. So this is ويكتحل وترا. ويسن, in the Sharh he says ويسن نظر في مرآة وتطيب. ويسن, it's recommended to look into the mirror. And it's recommended because, to remove any harm or any thing that might be on one's face or so. And the dua that is mentioned, اللهم حسن اللهم كما أحسنت خلقي فحسن خلقي. As some of the ulama, they said that the dua is authentic, but not necessarily attached to looking into the mirror. Right? So, ويسن نظر في مرآة, but also not to be an extreme in the matter. وتطيب, and it's recommended to put طيب or good perfume or smell for the person to always smell good. ويسن نظر في مرآة وتطيب. We'll stop here, inshallah. So going back to the Zad al-Mustaqni to make sure that we read it correctly. باب السواك وسنن الوضوء. التسوك بعود لين منق غير مضر لا يتفتت لا بأصبعه وخرقة مسنون كل وقت لغير صائم بعد الزوال متأكد عند صلاة وانتباه وتغير فم ويستاك عرضا مبتدئا بجانب فمه الأيمن ويدهن غبا ويكتحل وترا. So we'll stop here, inshallah. If you have any questions or any word that is not clear or any explanation that needed, please ask, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. نعم, العرجون is the سعف النخيل, or is what they call it in English. Maybe somebody can get it from us, which is al-'idq, right? Which is it stays on the palm tree after. Maybe someone got it there. Is it mubah to use siwak after sunrise before dhuhr? Yes, as we heard here in the madhab, it's permissible to be used before dhuhr, and it's makruh after dhuhr. But again, another riwayah, another narration that it's not makruh all day. No problem in using the siwak, because there's evidences where the Prophet ﷺ كان يستاك that he alayhi salatu wasalam used to use the siwak while fasting the whole day. So this is also another narration. After siwak, usually there is saliva mixed with dirt of teeth. Do you swallow it or spit? Because it also may have juice of the fresh siwak, especially during Ramadan. It's if a person uses it, usually this is because it's dry. But with the saliva, with the normal taste of the siwak, there's no harm in this, and the person is not intentionally taking that into his own self, and a person doesn't have to spit it unless there is something in the mouth. No, Wallahu a'lam. And of course, these things, and if a person does it intentionally, then this is an issue. But if a person, it happens that uses siwak while fasting, and he swallows without intentionally wants to swallow something or a taste, then it's okay, inshallah. And it's best, of course, to spit it if it has something in it, and that's why this is as I said, with regards to the dry one, to avoid it. Obsessive, نعم, جزاكم الله خيرا. جزاكم الله خيرا. Being obsessive with combing the hair, with using oil, things like this. And this is for a person to be at ease and not to make takalluf in any sort. The attendance code is as-siwak. As-siwak. Al-siwak. Are we supposed to clean the molar teeth using miswak or just the front teeth? No, all the teeth. The side, the back, the front, all of the teeth. And that's what, other than going back and forth. Barakallahu fikum. Could you briefly explain the red text in page 79 again? Okay, inshallah. 79, okay. The red. ولا يرفع حدث رجل طهور يسير خلت به امرأة لطهارة كاملة عن حدث. نعم. This is the mas'ala of a man needs wudu. He broke his wudu. And the water that is there is tahur. So it's a pure water. Is not contaminated, is not something else. But it's yasir. And the word yasir, as we said, that means it's less than qullatin. But this water, a woman, she was alone with it, and she used it for a full purification after breaking her wudu. So small amount of water that the woman was alone using it to make wudu or to make ghusl. And this water is left after her wudu or after her ghusl, after her purification. She used it. So this water does not change the status of the man if he wants to use it to make wudu, because of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The illah, the wisdom behind it, Allah knows best. So that's because of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And that's why it's mentioned here. It's yasir, number one. She's alone with it, right? And she used it for a complete tahara. So if there's someone with her, someone is present, then it's okay to be used. No. Hopefully it's clear, inshallah. What is isfirar al-asnan? Al-isfirar from a sufra, which is yellowness. So the teeth, when it's yellow, becomes yellow. Then it's recommended to use the siwak. It says, I also wanted to ask, is the hadith regarding the siwak being used before and after zawal while fasting graded weak? And generally, is using the siwak while it's dry or wet recommended? Yes, the hadith with regards to a siwak that is makruh after the zawal is weak. Now, the ulama, they agree that it is weak. And the other authentic hadith is that the Prophet or some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, they said, we saw the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam make siwak ma la uhsi sa'iman. I saw him many times making siwak while he is fasting, that I can count how many times. And it goes with the general ruling لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة, which is the salah in every salah. And those who mentioned the خلوف فم الصائم, that the smell of the mouth of the fasting person, it's meant to be because it's recommended. The other opinion is, or they answer this by saying it doesn't matter whether, the smell will continue to be there because it comes from the stomach, not becomes from the mouth. And using suwak while it's dry or wet recommended. If a person is fasting, they said the dry is better, but as long as it doesn't break into pieces. Different than the wet, because the wet can give a taste to it. متى يجب تصحيح الإمام إذا أخطأ في الصلاة? The question is when, or I guess when, is it it's obligatory to correct the Imam if he makes a mistake in the Salah. If, according to the question, if it's yajib or an obligation, if the Salah would not be valid if a person doesn't correct it, like making a major mistake in Surah Al-Fatiha that changed the meaning of it, then it's an obligation. Or, of course, the mistakes in standing for a fifth rak'ah or something like this. So if you mean with regards to the recitation of the Quran, if it's only changes the meaning in Surah Al-Fatiha. Other than Surah Al-Fatiha, it's, yes, there's adab and there's rulings of how to correct the Imam, and sometimes it's an obligation, as we said, if it's other than the Fatiha and the meaning becomes completely wrong, then of course it's an obligation if a person knows, what he's saying. Other than that, it's recommended. And if the ma'mum doesn't do it, it's not sinful. And every situation is different. Sometimes, if it causes the imam to be more confused or things of that nature, then a person can be careful of this, because he can, if the imam is not well versed in rulings, for example, which is a big problem. But if someone corrects him, he might say something that breaks the salah, for example, right? This is to correct the imam. It's something that is recommended with sincerity, that a person wants to make sure that things are done correctly. Or if the imam stops asking for help, basically when he stops, then this is where people someone can correct him, especially if someone that knows what he's doing, of course. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he was in the salah, فَلُبِّسَ عَلَيْهِ, he made a mistake, ﷺ. So when he finished the salah, he said to Ubay ibn Ka'b, you prayed with us? He said, yes. He says, فَمَا مَنَعَكَ, what prevented you from correcting me? Meaning things like this. So this is all recommended, inshallah. But with there are etiquettes to be observed, we can talk about that, inshallah. It's not a competition of who's correcting the imam. And if there's no major change to the meaning, then it's not something that is obligatory for the person to do so. And if it's corrected without disturbing anything, then this is good, inshallah. What is kuhl made here in the US? This is something that I'm not sure. Someone needs to answer that one, inshallah. But any kuhl is fine, as long as it's not made from something haram, because it's from a stone, and it's the best one is the ifmit. Does using the toothbrush have the same reward as the siwak? No one can say that it has the same reward as the siwak, but it's for the good intention, of course, of a person cleaning himself, making sure that he was when he's in the salah, he's having a good smell or no bad smell in his mouth, and that's a rewardable act. And he did what the siwak is supposed to be for. Versus, like, if you have the situation where someone uses the siwak from Iraq, right? And the siwak that he uses is old, he's not cleaning it, it doesn't do anything. Versus someone that is used the toothbrush and he cleaned his mouth. I'm talking about for the salah. Which is better? Of course, cleaning the mouth, because that's the objective of it. Other than the salah, using the toothbrush is a good thing, especially if it's, with all the different types of of food that people eat nowadays, and it's recommended by the people of expertise in this, then it's an important thing, of course. We're talking here as a ibadah before the salah, things like this. Now, what does khabar means? Khabar, this is in the linguistics of the grammar. When you have a jumla ismiya, the sentence is a noun sentence, starts with a noun. That's called mubtada. This is the beginning word of the sentence. Al-khabar is the word that would gives a word or a sentence that complete the meaning of the sentence. That's the khabar in the grammar from a grammar perspective. One question from this morning. Yes, please, inshallah. Can khirqa means floss? Khirqa is not a floss. Khirqa is a piece of cloth. But you can floss comes under these meanings? Yes. Floss, anything that cleans the teeth. It's always good and it's recommended. But does it constitute like the suwak takes the position of the suwak before the salah? This is where the issue that before the salah, it's a suwak. Is it referring to any woman or one's wife? No, it refers to any woman. That with regards to tahur al-yasir, khalat bihi imra'a, it doesn't, even if it's a disbelieving woman, believing woman, it doesn't matter. There's the hadith that says if three are in town and desert and they don't pray together, then shaitan overpowers them. Does the same apply for two? Well, if the jama'ah is made with two as minimum. So what is, as the ulama they say in this hadith, ما من ثلاثة في قرية أو بدو لا تقام فيهم الصلاة إلا استحوذ عليهم الشيطان. What refers to that hadith. There's no three people in a town or any place where the jama'ah is not established among them unless the shaitan overtakes them, overpowers them. But knowing that the jama'ah is also established with two, and if a person is alone, of course there's no jama'ah on him. But if there is two, still the jama'ah needs to be established. And that's why it's the hadith, and as the ulama, they said this is in a way of, the number is not what is meant specifically, it's about the jama'ah not being established. Because it's easy to miss if a person is two people. Allah knows best. But it refers to, if the jama'ah can be established and it's not, then this is a dangerous state for people to be in a place. This is not as an incident, but this is their life is living in a place where the jama'ah can be established and they don't establish it. Allahu a'lam. With the suwak that have some flavor like the olive one, is the fine to use while fasting, or should you rinse your mouth after? Just for the fact for a person that he would find a taste in his mouth, it doesn't break the fast. It's about swallowing whatever is in one's mouth. If it's done intentionally, then it breaks the fast. If a person intentionally swallowing. But if a person just uses swag and he find a taste in his mouth, and if it's strong, then he spit it out. If not, and he feels it without intentionally swallowing it, does not break the fast. Wallahu a'lam. But the swag that has a taste to it, to avoid that in fasting, this is definitely something good to be done, where they put flavor to it, not the natural one. Barakallahu fikum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. And inshallah, the exam is hopefully inshallah ta'ala Sunday, and also with the memorization. We'll skip this week in memorization, inshallah, if you guys don't mind, so that you can study, inshallah, for the exam, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.